Welcome back for Halloween. And yeah, I'll take this off, but just wanted to show a interesting mask I purchased for Halloween with Freddy, Leatherface, Jason, Michael, and of course none other than Mr. Child's Play himself, Chucky. But with that said, this is a special, of course, Halloween theme edition of Box Office Versus. So, in today's Box Office Versus, we have the battle of the biggest films, more or less, of the Conjuring universe. This is a box office versus of The Conjuring versus The Conjuring 2. Two James Wan films, of course. So, with that said, we look at length, year it was done, budget, box office, domestic and worldwide, Rotten Tomatoes, and everything, along with Metacritic and IMDb. And at the end, I give my own personal opinion. So, with that said, first up we have The Conjuring, released in 2013, rated R. It would be an hour and 52 minutes long, relatively longer compared to many horror films out there. But overall, I think a decent length. It has very good pacing. So, with that said, then we look at The Conjuring 2. It would be released in 2016. It would be 2 hours and 14 minutes long, rated R. Now, The Conjuring 1 would have a budget of $20 million, which is still relatively bigger, given production companies like Blumhouse would be involved. The Conjuring 2 would have a budget of $40 million, so double that. $40 million is quite a big budget for most horror films, because it's rare to see a horror film budget over $15 million. But with that said, now with The Conjuring 1, domestic box office, it would gross $137,400,141, which would make up 42.9% of its global take. Worldwide, The Conjuring 1 would end up doing $320,290,989 total. Conjuring 2 would do domestically 102 million, or rather $102,470,008. So it would do about 35 million less domestically. It total gross 31.8% would be domestic. Worldwide, however, it would end up doing 321,788,219. Total worldwide, it would end up doing about around $1.5 million more dollars than the first. So it's actually very much neck and neck when it comes to box office. The Conjuring 2 would be about 20 minutes longer, and yes, some parts may feel a little drug out. Now, personally, I thought the pacing for the most part and the build-up was really good. I know there's many people that disagree with that, but whatever. Then we look at Rotten Tomatoes. The Conjuring 1 would have an 86% critic and would have an 83% audience. One of the few times on this list so far to actually see critics and audiences pretty much about equal levels agreeing on a film. That is a rarity. Conjuring 2 would have an 80% critic rating, so about 6% less. Audience score would be 81%, 2% less than the first film. So, once again, the audience and the critic score is pretty much the same, and it's almost the same level, just a few points here and there different, but not a huge difference. It's very close. So, in areas most so far looking at stuff, they're pretty much neck and neck. On Metacritic, critic score for Conjuring 1 is 68% and has an 8.2 out of 10 among audience score on Metacritic. Now, with The Conjuring 2 Metacritic, it would do 65% critic score, so 3% less, and audience score would be a 7.7 out of 10 on Metacritic. So, audience score was actually half, basically a half, or a 0.5% higher overall. So, a relatively decent increase, but still relatively close, even in that area. Now on IMDb, um, Conjuring 1 has a 7.5 out of 10, and The Conjuring 2 has a 7.3 out of 10. So, at the end, what do we get from looking at all these different contributing factors? Pretty much, it's almost neck and neck between both films in almost every score. By far the closest overall so far in doing these versus on occasion series. Now, my personal take on it, I think the pacing overall is probably better flow overall pacing wise in the first film. I think they did a better job and everything, but I personally like the slower burn build in The Conjuring 2, and I admit I also have a real enjoyment out of the introduction and debut of the, of course, Demon of Valak. With that said, also, of course, the even not so suddenly, of course, do references in the beginning of the film to obviously the Amityville, which is infamous. But with that said, over at the end day, which do I personally like more? I have to give it to The Conjuring 2. I personally like The Conjuring 2 just definitely more. It's not as neck and neck for me personally. I just like the entity designs and everything built up better, and I like the stuff taking place in England personally. But everybody has their own opinions. Most people I personally know prefer the first Conjuring. I know maybe only one other person that actually likes The Conjuring 2 more than the first one. So I'm definitely in the minority, but I'm fine with that. But with that said, that is a special Halloween edition of Box Office Versus. Let me know if you'd like me to do any more future box office verses like this, and give me some ideas for some verses. Like maybe do a battle of like Tim Burton films or something of that nature, or maybe do something interesting like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory versus Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. But with that said, I'll see y'all soon enough, and have a happy Halloween, everyone. Stay safe out there. With all the craziness going on, if you're interested in the music that played in the background, the music comes off of the soundtrack to the one of my personal favorite horror games, Silent Hill 4: The Room, which is currently underrated, I might add. But hopefully you enjoyed this. And also on my main channel, I am going to be I uploaded about a day ago a special survival horror game review on Resident Evil 2 for the PS1. So check that out if you're at all interested, and I'll see y'all soon enough.